be. Today we have a very exciting show for you. If you have not been following the news, we are now officially in a conundrum. Why do I say that? Well, the peace deal that Donald Trump thought he had seems to be falling apart right before our eyes. Apparently over the weekend, J.D. Vance was supposed to be meeting Iran negotiators in, I believe, Switzerland somewhere to sign off on the deal. And unfortunately, that went left because Israel didn't agree with what was the deal. So they went ahead and attacked Lebanon, despite the fact that Donald Trump himself said that he would be able to control them. Let's show a clip of what that conversation was like.
There are no limits.
No,
not. I haven't learned that lesson yet. I know there are, but there are no limits. We defeated them totally militarily. I was asked by Pakistan, because they're close, to please not do any more. I said, I like them a lot. If it weren't for Donald Trump, Israel would have been eviscerated.
your relationship with Netanyahu's
It's good, but we have to keep him a little bit sane.
Are you going to be able to control Israel from attacking Lebanon?
Yeah, I will be. I mean,
How?
I wonder. They have a lot of respect for me, and they do as I say. There are no limits.
No.
No, not. I haven't learned that lesson.
So there you have it. While he says we are going to be able to tame Israel, the very next scene, Israel's attacking Lebanon, saying they will not accept the deal, and they're charting their own course, and they're going to attack, and they're going to keep us involved. Now, here's the thing that troubles me. Despite the fact that Trump knows that Israel on purpose sabotaged his peace deal, he's talking tough to Iran when you know Israel is the one sabotaging the peace deal. I don't know why he would do that. And now there's talks that Iran is walking away as a result of the situation with Israel and Lebanon, them not agreeing to stop their attacks. Obviously, they're not going to jump in to an attack, to a peace deal where Lebanon's still being under attack. And now, for those of you who don't know, the Strait of Hormuz is closed again. Now, let's go to a clip I found pretty much saying that Trump is in a conundrum. He is in a tough situation that he can't really find himself out of. And I think this is what the critics were trying to run Trump against. They were telling him, don't go into Iran. This is a bad deal. You are only going to find yourself in an ongoing war that could last years, because there is no easy exit once you enter the Iran situation. But I don't think Trump took that seriously. So let's go ahead and let's see what was said about the situation.
I'll keep this quick. We need a huge number of donations today to flip this U.S. Senate seat in Texas. If everyone watching this right now made a contribution, we'd reach our goal.
He's stuck, basically. He's stuck in this position. At some point, he's probably going to have to accede to the inevitable, agree some sort of a deal, get the U.S. out of there, try and save face, claim it's a victory, claim they've done enormous damage to Iran's capabilities, and it really doesn't look like the U.S. is going to get a good outcome out of this.
You had J.D. Vance flying back unexpectedly for a meeting at the White House. You had Trump holding a call with Arab leaders, and we know that Trump is meeting with his cabinet this week. We know that there have been briefings to journalists, MAGA influencers, to try and lay the groundwork for a potential deal. Why do you think it didn't happen when we were hearing it, Mike?
Trump wants to get this war over with. He's being pushed very hard by, not by MAGA, interestingly, but by what might be called some of the sort of more traditional kind of neocons in the Republican Party, who are very, very, who believe firmly in the efficacy of the U.S. military interventions to achieve major changes. He's being pushed to continue the war, finish the job in the favored terminology, go in there, knock out the rest of whatever Iran has, knock over the regime if it can, certainly, go in, maybe seize the uranium. In other words, escalate the war from the sort of stasis that it's in right now. He doesn't want to do that. And I will say this here, I think, we can criticize Donald Trump a lot. I think he's right about this. This will be an all-out war that people are talking about with Iran. Iran is a country, the size of Afghanistan and Iraq combined. It has obviously very strong military capabilities. It's survived. This regime has survived for 47 years. It wouldn't just be a simple sort of surgical strike. This would be to finish the job in the way that he's being urged would require an all-out war between the United States and Iran. And Donald Trump, I think quite rightly, doesn't want to do that. So he's trying to do a deal that gets him out of this without losing too much face and without looking like what, unfortunately, it looks like, which is kind of a U.S. surrender. In other words, opening the strait, getting Iran to agree to open the strait, and then to also agree to significant concessions on its nuclear program. At the weekend, from what I'm told, what we seem to have the outlines of a deal in which Iran would agree to open the strait, the US would lift its blockade, then there'd be a 30 or 60-day period in which the nuclear stuff would be negotiated with an understanding that somewhere down the line Iran would agree to by the way, what it's always said its objective is, which it doesn't want a nuclear weapon, and that it will somehow get rid of its nuclear material, its highly enriched uranium, which it has 400 kilograms or something, and that there would be a deal around that. Now that, unfortunately, that kind of a deal to the hardliners, these people I sort of describe as kind of neocons, would look like an American surrender, because basically what will you have achieved? I mean, you'll have achieved getting the Strait of Hormuz open, which when it was open on February the 28th, when Trump started this war. So, the war hasn't achieved anything there. And even if you get Iran down the road to agree to a nuclear deal in which it gets rid of its nuclear materials, well, that, surprisingly enough, was the deal that Barack Obama negotiated with Iran in 2015, 11 years ago, which Republicans, including Donald Trump, have been absolutely scathing about. So the only deal that's really on offer, which Donald Trump seems minded to take, would look like a complete humiliation for the US. So I think he was persuaded to back off. And then we had that incident where there was some shooting that went on. Iran, the US was escorting some ships, fired defensively on some Iranian boats, and then Iran fired back at a drone. But that was all sort of, that seemed to be quite sort of controlled. One other very interesting thing, Katie, and then and I'll shut up. There was one thing that was floated at the weekend, was this idea that as part of a deal, the Arab countries would recognize the state of Israel and extend the Abraham Accords. And this was seized on by Trump supporters as, wow, this will be an amazing, amazing achievement. It's not true. I mean, I've spoken to Arab officials. They're not going to recognize Israel. They're certainly not going to do it as part of a deal with Iran. So he's stuck, basically. He's stuck in this position. At some point, he's probably going to have to accede to the inevitable, agree some sort of a deal, get the US out of there, try and save face, claim it's a victory, claim they've done enormous damage to Iran's capabilities, and the reality will be Iran survives. It will have de facto control over the Strait of Hormuz, and it will basically do with its nuclear program what it always claimed it was going to do with its nuclear program. So it's not. It really doesn't look like the US is going to get a good outcome out of this.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add on that is, I think there is a large enough part of the MAGA sphere, Trump's, inner outer circle, that are just so desperate for this to be over, didn't really want it in the first place, that they are willing to hold their nose and, do the tweets, say, Trump, the great peacemaker, come up with some things that aren't particularly corresponding with reality, perhaps when the deal and what came before. And I think the question is whether, those voices who on Saturday decided to get out on the front foot and start saying this deal is bad before the deal was announced, leading to, exchanges between Republican lawmakers and the White House director of comms saying, you don't know what you're talking about. But, it was clearly to try and stop something from happening. Once Trump announces something, do this group, get back in their box, or do they decide to keep going with the criticism? And maybe it links a little bit in with what we've been talking about at the beginning of this podcast, which is, if it does seem that Trump has absolute authority in his party, if it is the case that if you are, someone who votes for Donald Trump 95% of the time, but dared to say you thought his words were a little bit reckless around January 6th, and you find yourself not getting an endorsement, maybe you do keep your powder dry. But at the same time, senators, I definitely feel in the past week or so, something has shifted in Washington, D.C. They are, finding their voices perhaps for cynical reasons because they no longer feel an incentive, those that have already been cast aside. But there is a real anger about the way Donald Trump has treated some of those Republican lawmakers. So I wouldn't completely rule out a small uprising when it comes to the GOP and a deal they're not happy with.
To your point about sort of rising rebelliousness among Republicans, in the last couple of weeks now, we've seen over a number of issues, over the infamous White House book, the additional funding for the White House ballroom that Donald Trump wants. Remember, Donald Trump said this new ballroom was going to be entirely funded by donors, and then he turned to Congress and said, actually, I need $1 billion for the security for it. A number of members of Congress have basically, including some senators, have said, no way, Mr. President, we're not doing that. And then again, and just, to wrap it all up in terms of what we talked about in the first part, you now have another senator, John Cornyn. Last week it was Bill Cassidy, who is the sort of zombie senator from Louisiana. He's still in the Senate for the next 8 months, even though, he's now lost his primary and so won't be standing again. And now you have John Cornyn in Texas, lost his primary, will be around for another 8 months, 7-8 months, won't be standing again. And these people, what we've seen in the past with all of these people who aren't standing again, is they suddenly discover that they own a spine, and they start to kind of demonstrate it. And I think, yeah, you're right. I think as we get, as whether it's Iran, whether it is some of these other issues, and especially as Trump's approval ratings remain absolutely in the basement, that spine that these Republicans are going to discover they have is going to start to be stiffened, and they're going to sort of stand up to some of the things he wants to do.
So there you have it. Trump is losing support with his own party members, some of which he, stood against, didn't support for their primaries, and now those people who are on their way out of office is trying to figure out how to make things tough for him. So there's a lot of things that's not kind of lining up for Donald Trump right now with regards to this decision. And I think this is what a lot of people were trying to warn him against. The Tucker Carlsons, the others who are on the right ring, who were telling him, don't go into Iran. It is literally a death trap, because even his friends, the Israelis, the allies, their vision is not clear. And because their vision is not clear, our vision won't be clear. We don't know what the objectives are for going in there. So once he goes in, he finds himself in a situation that's really kind of unbearable, not good for him. And this is where he has no good options to choose from, because he's kind of backed himself into a corner. And that's where, it's like being between a rock and a hard place. What do you do in a situation like that, other than, tuck your tail in and head in another direction? Now, Trump's a proud man. He has made his money a certain way, and I think he thinks he can turn things around and it's all going to work out in his favor. But with every passing day that the Strait of Hormuz is closed and the energy prices go up, and this matter is not resolved and the markets take a hit as a result of it, the American people are going to remember that this was a completely voluntary thing that Trump didn't have to do, but he chose to do it. And now it's going to make him look weak and unable to manage, and it's really going to stain his legacy. And that's the unfortunate part that I think he didn't properly calculate. Now he's in such a situation where the Israelis aren't giving him a way out because they want the job finished. They want Trump to use this opportunity to attack Iran, for them to do a massive land grab and take parts of Lebanon so that they can expand their territory. And a lot of countries have sort of put bounties, if you will, on Netanyahu because they think the things that he's doing are war crime type of things. And you heard Trump kind of criticize some of those things that he's done. Now, again, I don't have all the details that, the president of the United States would have, but I think if you sort of aggregate the information, you would come to a conclusion that it's not good for anybody to be in this space, especially not a president who wants to hold on to power. He hasn't even completed 2 years in office yet, and he's got a major midterm coming up, and people elected him to make things better, to make things cheaper, and that's not going to happen if this continues. And for a guy who came in screaming America first and talking about not getting involved in pointless wars, to find himself putting another country's interest first and finding himself in a pointless war that really doesn't benefit the United States, he's kind of in trouble. This is 100 days and counting. We've utilized all our reserves. We used a lot of our armament, and we are at a depletion. And again, for him to re-engage in attacking, it's further going to weaken us with some of the other superpowers that are out there. And there's multiple fronts, multiple problems happening. The Ukraine war seems to be intensifying and not slowing down. So now if we're committing to helping Ukraine by giving them THAAD missiles and anti-aircraft missiles to shoot down planes, and Russia's unveiling new weapons, and we're being called upon to supply armament to both conflicts, we're not going to have anything for us. And there are highly flammable issues out there, specifically, potentially China can attack Taiwan, North Korea can attack South Korea. There are a ton of conflicts that is brewing. India could have a conflict with Pakistan, and so on and so forth. So this is not something that we should be engaging in, especially not with a country who's as capable as Iran. But unfortunately, Trump blindly walked into this. Maybe because he was naive, he believed that he can help out some friends and didn't really see the big picture. And he allowed people to talk him into doing something that is going to undermine his presidency. And that's where we find ourselves. Donald Trump is still trying to figure it all out. Now, I did see a clip about Trump trying to, I don't see it. Yeah, it was just a clip about pretty much him saying that he was going to get things under control, and it's just not under control, and it's spiraling out of control. So again, I urge Americans and others just to pray for the president, man. It's an extreme situation to find yourself in, and any missteps could only escalate this and cause further hardship for the people of this country. Not just locally, but those who are traveling abroad, right? And you just don't want to see innocent bystanders suffer from poor decisions from our elected officials. So let's keep him in prayer, and let's pray that there's an off-ramp that does not further escalate this matter. So that's it for me. That being said, I thank you guys for joining me for this particular segment. We try to keep you up to date on what's happening. So definitely like and subscribe, stay connected to the show so you can get some updates on that. But also leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Weigh in. Am I misreading the situation? Do you think that somehow, some way things will work out in Trump's favor? Is this going to be the end of his presidency? Weigh in. Let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. Thanks again. Bye-bye.